Boker Tov, Rabbi Patrick. This is my third reflection in our theodicy class, um, essentially on Kushner. And um, well, the first thing I want to say is now it's, I don't know, the second or third time I've read this book, and I feel like it's a book I I should read maybe every 5 years in my life because it as our life experience changes, Kushner's theology and ideas um, for me are ever more relevant. Um, so I'm going to address the questions, the four bullet point questions you have. What is my take on Kushner's theodicy? Do I agree or do I disagree? Overall, yes, I agree with his theology. I do not believe in a punishing God. I do not believe in a God who is present in this world, making things happen that are sources of happiness and joy or deep sadness for human beings. And I I believe, and one of the things that's kind of I see in Kushner's um, theology is that it's less about his perception of what the reality of God might be and more about his perception of what God needs to be for humans to cope with the reality of human life and that we're mortal and that we're going to suffer. And I'm good with that. I think having an instrumental view of God that helps us is really critical, uh, and it's going to be something that I think a lot about as I step forward in my rabbinate. Um, um, why do you think this book continues to be popular? Well, first off, I think that he writes about really complicated things in a really straightforward way. And uh, he takes a very clear theological position on theodicy. He doesn't fumfer, he isn't vague. He has a point of view, and it's a point of view based on his own very painful life experience. And I think that that is it's not only a relevant book for people who are experiencing deep suffering around tragedy or what we generally perceive of as tragedy. I think it's an incredible book for anyone who just wakes up every day and sees that there's so much suffering and pain in the world, experiences some of it themselves, and is asking questions about it. Um, so, and finally, I just wanted to say I think that I'm not sure where it was on the reading list in these three classes, but I found that this book was incredibly important to our class on theology, our class on pastoral care, because his examples of what to do and what not to do are really straightforward and helpful, and on in terms of ritual, because the whole discussion about why we pray and relates to his idea of God, obviously, and I think it's a really useful foundation for thinking about ritual. So your third bullet point is who do I think of the thinkers in finding God he would be most comfortable with, or with him. I actually think three. Maimonides, because God, for Maimonides, is a philosophic idea. Buber, because God is present in the I-thou relationship, and relationships and making them work is a core part of how God is acting to comfort in the Kushnerian world. And third, Kaplan, because Kaplan sees God's presence in acts of human goodness. And God is not this all-powerful actor who is acting in the world for each of those three thinkers, and I think that's very much aligned with Kushner. And finally, my personal reflection, try to keep my act together through this. Our third child is adopted. He's 28 years old. He's been struggling with serious mental illness and issues for a long time, quite a while now. And he possibly will for the remainder of his life. I have newly discovered, as I've worked on my relationship with him, that the only way to be in relationship with him is to understand how much he's suffering and to relate to that, to empathize with that, and to understand that his experience of suffering is on a spectrum of human experience. It may be very extreme for him, but it doesn't define him as somehow being abnormal. It defines him as being actually very human. So what I've learned to do is just to accept where he is, to love him for where he is and who he is in his life. And I think that's to basically try to be in an I-thou relationship with him, despite all of my own imperfections and all of his imperfections. It's exactly what Kushner says at the very end of the book. He says, "And if you can do these things, will you be able to recognize that the ability to forgive and the ability to love are the weapons God has given us to enable us to live fully, bravely, and meaningfully in this less than perfect world?" That's what I'm working on. Shabbat Shalom.